Well, hello and welcome back for another episode of Talking Baldocks. This is episode 23. Uh, my name's Neil Baldock. What's
Sorry,
your
could you say
name?
that number three any higher?
What's your name? Come on.
My name's Matt Bulldog.
And we're talking Baldocks. And
We don't do that until the end.
well, we do it now, and we don't seem to be able to get a standard start to this podcast. So
Well,
hopefully,
because you're just meant to go, I'm Neil Bulldog, and this is, and I say, I'm Matt Bulldog, and then we just carry on. But instead, you started with, this is episode 23.
well, it is. It's episode 23. So, what are we talking Baldocks about today?
So you're going to love it today because we're going to talk numbers. Um, so there's been a couple of things I've seen. So there was obviously this headline news thing in the Negotiator, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, with an agent claiming that they were going to go bust because of the rising Rightmove costs.
Yes, I saw that. Yes.
And then on the back of that, I then saw another post just regarding agents and their fees and and kind of slashing fees and it all. And I was saying, well, what about pound notes? And then and it just kind of got me thinking about, do agents actually understand how much it costs them to sell property, which is something we did allude to talking about in when we came back after the new year. So yeah, just that kind of thing. Really, I think number one, if you get to a stage where you're actually blaming Rightmove for you not having enough money, as in not being able to kind of run your business, then I think there's a few things you should have done beforehand and some big changes you probably need to make now. And then there is obviously always this battle online about what percentages we should. God, as I can speak then, what percentages we should charge. But as you well know, percentages are really bollocks. It's actually about pound notes.
Yes, definitely. Percentages don't pay the bills, do they? Um,
No.
so yeah, I mean, it's interesting with the whole. Just to give you my two pence worth on the right move thing. I mean, clearly, it's not a carte blanche for Rightmove to charge us what the hell they want and do
No.
what the hell they want. Um, but I do think, yeah, agents have like demonised Rightmove and forgot to start looking at the value they might be able to get from it. And if it is going to cost you that much money, yeah, can make sure you get the maximum out of it. But the other thing is, it's always touted around as my biggest overhead. It's my one biggest overhead. And if you're running a business of any scale, I guess it's not your biggest overhead. I mean, our team is our biggest overhead, so people are our biggest overhead. We've got a lettings book the size that our finance software costs us probably in a similar region, if not more, to Rightmove. So, but we get value from it, and that's why we have it. So, I think people have got to kind of like stop just going, "Oh, it's Rightmove. They're charging us what they want." As I say, with the caveat that yeah, the way they treat customers sometimes can be a bit of a piss take. But I always think you've got to try and work with if you need something, then you need to try and work with it.
Well, that's what is it because, and this isn't a pro right move podcast, but by any means. So listen, we don't
No.
want our costs going up, and and actually our account manager at the minute seems a good guy, but we've had some dreadful ones in the past, right? But there isn't a law anywhere that I can see, and I've been an agent for quite some time now that says you have to advertise on Rightmove. Okay, so and when I point that out to customers, sorry, to clients in a consulting point of view. So when I point it out to other agents, they go, "Oh no, I have to be on Rightmove because I need it for my business." Well, then actually, if you need it, it probably is providing some value, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you've got so Christian and Anne, for instance, are based in Shoreditch, a letting agency. They don't use Rightmove at all. They've pivoted their business and they've gone, right, we don't need Rightmove. We're just going to work off our social media and Zoopla and whatever else they use. But if people are saying, oh, it's not fair, they're charging me too much money, but I need them. Well, if they're so important that you need them, they must be bringing value.
Mm. Yeah, that's right. And also, I think the other way to look at it is if it was any other business, let's say you had a building company and someone said to you, "Oh, well, my mate's extension only costs 30,000." And as the builder, you would say, "Well, that's very nice, but it's now 2 years on, and all the all the material costs have gone up X amount, and all the labour costs have gone up X amount, and so therefore it now costs you £50,000. What the builder doesn't do is say, "Oh, well, I love this business, so I'll not make any money and I'll do it for 30,000." Do you
Mm.
see what I mean? So people put their charge up to the owner, and I know that we could go down a rabbit hole with that about how to increase fees. But what you do to increase fees is you explain why and you explain the value, and the public well know that, or the public, a lot of them think, oh, you're just going to chuck it on Rightmove. So if someone's willing to make that comment to you, number one, you should be explaining your full marketing plan and everything else you do apart from that. But also, what you do is you say, you're quite right. One of the things I am going to do is put it on Rightmove. And did you know Rightmove cost me £30,000 a year, or whatever the figure may be? Um, and people will be shocked at that. And you say so. And also, by the way, I'm only trying to handle X amount of houses so we give you a fantastic service. So if we start computing that into numbers, and people kind of will understand that if you have that conversation with them. And that's why it's important to know actually what does it cost you to sell each house, because then when somebody's asking you to do it for a certain fee, you can actually fluently explain to them, I cannot do it for that because these are my costs. This is what you're going to get from me, and you either see value in that or you don't.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's something I definitely want to come back onto in a bit is actually the understanding of what it costs people to sell houses. But my just on this, my and again, I'm kind of generalizing because they will be different. And listen, we would like our Rightmove bill to be cheaper, and actually we'd like our Zoopla bill to be cheaper if you're listening as well. But um, what I tend to find the majority of agents that spend a lot of their energy complaining publicly about this is number one, right? Let's just be really honest. Life isn't fair.
Mm,
Okay, things happen that aren't fair, and so you can go, "Oh, this isn't fair," or you can make adjustments to get on with it. Okay, so
correct.
that's number one. But number two is, and on that, I tend to find the agents that are really vocal in their complaints, they're not actually. When you look at their business as a whole, they're probably not charging enough money. They haven't looked at their fees. They don't do a lot on social media. So they're not actually, rather than going, well, Rightmove's too much, I'm going to see what I can do to not need Rightmove. They're not doing anything. I looked at, they haven't updated their Instagram or their Facebook in God knows how many months.
Mm,
Um, they're not selling the right amount of houses they're listing. So actually, they're taking on a lot of houses and not selling them. So they're not bringing enough income. It's not necessarily their costs too high. Sometimes it's actually they're not bringing enough income. And then as I put on a post yesterday, like, have you looked at do you, unfortunately, we've talked about teams being the biggest overhead. Is there a tough conversation to make there? Your general overheads as a whole, are you paying for leases? What's your office like? Do you need that size of office? Have you got a couple of photocopies on the go you don't need anymore? There are all lots of costs you could do, but what I find is people like it's a bit lazy, really, isn't it? We just like to point at the easy big bad villain and go, right, maybe it's expensive, rather than actually spending the time putting work and making maybe some tough decisions in the business that you need to do. And actually, so making some tough decisions to make some cuts, but also making some proactive decisions to bring more income in, as in doing more on social media, raising your fees, and actually being honest with yourself and saying, like, fuck, I'm only selling half of the houses I list. I've got a problem with the price I'm listing, or my lister needs
mm.
some training.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, I think, it will never go away in our industry because it is a big cost. We will always feel bitter about it, and I think that's fair enough as well
Yeah,
because of the historically poor customer service. So I think that's fair enough because actually, if Rightmove are listening, they could do a hell of a lot more to show their value.
yeah,
And that, we're talking about as an industry, if we want to charge the right fees and to show our value, they could take a lesson out of our book and do that back to the agency community as their customers. But the other thing about Rightmove, it's like when you're looking at marketing, um, where do your customers go? That's what we're always thinking. It's like, where do our customers go and where can we put our brand in front of them? Well, they all go on Rightmove. So why wouldn't you want your brand on there? And I'm not saying it's like a huge lead generator in terms of getting you valuations, and we've never really been a big fan of it for that. But if you become a very well-known brand, and I always say success leaves clues. When I'm talking to agents and they're, "Oh, I can't afford that bit of tech, and I can't afford that, and I don't want to do that." I go, look, have a look at people who have grown their businesses. Have a look at what these really successful agents are doing. And nine times out of ten, you start seeing the same brand awareness, the same technology in their business or similar technology, etc. They're investing in things. And so it's just a different mindset, but because it's the big bad wolf, and rightly so, because of they haven't treated us very well as an industry. That's where it comes from. So yeah, I think. But as you say, you can either have the like you can either spend a lot of energy fighting against it, or you can direct your energy in actually making your business more profitable.
Yeah, sometimes it is what it is. I think I commented on some comment on my post there, and I said, "Listen, I'm not a fan of Rightmove, but I'm even less of a fan of people moaning without changing anything."
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a bit. And then so on that, and this is where, especially because there might be some self-employed agents listening to this, thinking, "Well, I don't really have to worry about this because my Rightmove's covered by my the fee that I pay whoever the broker is I work under." But say a part of me is thinking that when they're moaning, they're not actually looking at their fees and charging more. And so again, there was an interesting post out yesterday about people charging percentages, and I just said, "Well, what does the pound notes look like?" And I actually don't necessarily feel that agents, and which is fair enough because, and I was exactly the same when I first came into this. We're all very good estate agents when we're employed. We don't know how to be business people,
Mm,
right? And then you get so caught up in the marketing and what you enjoy and trying to keep everything going, you don't necessarily learn the business stuff. You have self-taught in credit to you all the business side of things. So that's great. But so good agents aren't always good business people. And so they don't understand actually how much it costs them to sell a property. And the reason I've referenced self-employed agencies here, I don't want self-employed agents out there to think their only cost is the
mm,
however many hundreds of pounds a month they're giving to the brokerage and the 30% or 60% or 10% or whatever they're cutting off because they have other costs as well. And what we've definitely found over the years is you think that they're only a couple of little bits, but they soon add up, right?
mm. Yeah, 100%. Well, it's interesting. I want to make a point about self-employed people because if you think that that is your only overhead, you've really got to start actually thinking about um, what's your hourly rate because are you earning what you should be earning? So we can come back to that. Um, but yeah, I mean, basically, people have got to do an exercise, and it is a bit boring, but it's whilst it's boring, it's also light bulb moment time, and very enlightening once you know what the number is. Um, so people have got to kind of like understand how profit and loss account works. Top line, we have revenue, then we have cost of sales, and what cost of sales is what does it actually cost me to sell that house? And we've actually moved Rightmove into our cost of sales. It used to be in our marketing spend, but then our marketing spend looked massive, and we were like, well, we're not really spending that much on marketing. So what's that all about? And we feel that we do need Rightmove. So we have moved, in our opinion, we need Rightmove to achieve the best results for our clients at the moment. So as part of our marketing strategy, that's what we use. And so we've moved that into our cost of sale, along with our staff, along with professional photography costs, along with um, maybe outsourced sales progression costs. Anything that is a cost of delivering that service is a cost of sale. Um, and then underneath that, you then have, and that gives you basically your revenue minus your cost of sales gives you your gross profit. And people will look at that and go, oh, that's a big number because it should be fairly substantial. But then you have another section of your administration costs. So your accountant, your turning the light on in your building if you've got one, the heating, um, phones, um, any marketing you have done, leaflet drops, digital marketing, all of the rest of your costs. Even to the point where people might not realise that, like, they use a viewing assistant or a view bar or something like that, and that's a subcontractor. So you have those costs in there, and then at the bottom of that is your net profit. So your gross profit minus your administrative costs is your net profit, and don't forget that's before tax. So basically you've got to do an exercise in how many houses are you selling per month, and then minus your overheads. Or sorry, divide it by the overheads associated with your sales side of the business. And again, like when people are doing this, you can get really granular, and which may put people off doing it. But like our business, for instance, we run everything through one company. It's a sales and a lettings business. And as we know, it can get complicated because generally things cost more to run a sales business than they do a lettings business. But we have more staff and team for the letting side of the business. Um, and so you, what I'm getting to is don't make it too complicated. Some things, they're like the office, just split it 50-50. Allocate 50% of it to your sales side, 50% to your lettings, if you have both of those businesses. If you're a self-employed agent, you're a one man or woman band, then obviously you don't need to do that. Um, Unless you've got premises and team and things like that. So you just take the number you're selling and divide it by your overheads, and that will tell you how much it actually costs um, to sell each house. Now, obviously, that can be variable depending on how many houses you're selling. But there's no point in saying, oh, well, I can get that cost down if I sell 10 houses if you're only selling four a month. Because to get to the 10, you're probably going to have to spend more money on marketing and things like that. You're going to have to do a lot more. And also, you just got to be realistic with yourself of like, how many are we selling on average? So that's what I would do is take the average number of sales that the company's produced over the last year or so, and then divide it by that to get yourself an idea of what that number is. And quite often, people will do this exercise and probably think, like, shit, to be honest, because it'll be a lot higher than people think. Um, and then that's when you can implement a minimum fee so that well, this is what it's going to cost me to sell. There's no point in me doing anything under what my minimum fee is. And your minimum fee shouldn't be what it costs you, by the way. It should be because then there's no profit, right? So then you, as the director of the business, doesn't get paid because unless you put yourself on PAYE, you take your dividends out of the profit. So yeah, people have got to do that exercise um, and make the minimum fee to allow a profit margin in it for them.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And it's something we've done because we've done the paper. Because I mean, we've done a minimum fee for years, but we once, we were smug, we've got a minimum fee. And then I think you ran all the numbers and we worked out that on our minimum fee, we were losing about £300,
Yeah, that's
on the
exactly.
sales. So then we had to, well, that can't be the minimum fee anymore. It has to go up. And this is where I think, we do target ourselves as a percent. We say, this is roughly our standard percentage. But I mean, the last property I've listed, if you look at it as a percentage, it's 2.2%, which is well above what we usually would go at. However, it was a lower volume property. It's leasehold with a higher than you'd like ground rent. So I know it's going to take longer because it's not even just what it's going to cost me to sell it, it's how long it's going to take me to get paid. Because I know it's going to end up needing a deed of variation. So it's going to take longer to go through. So for me, it had to go even. I almost had to have a new minimum fee for it. I was like, well, our minimum fee is this, but this one's going to take longer to go through, so it's going up. So yeah, it's not me swanning around saying, oh, I charge 2.2% on everything, but it's like that was the least A, I was willing to work for, and B, that would actually make the company profit.
Mm. Yeah, and actually, people really understand it. Again, I believe everybody understands things when it's explained to them,
Hmm.
and people can then see value when it's explained to them, and then they make their choice over whether that's valuable or not. But a lot of times, people would approach us with an apartment, and I would literally say to them, "Look, we'd love to help you, but we're going to be very expensive, and we're probably going to be over 2%, and you will be offered 1% elsewhere. But these are the reasons why." Um, but we have a minimum fee which is X amount, and yeah, it may well equate to 2% or more. If you want to use us. If you don't, I totally understand that. And yeah, probably half the time they go, oh well, yeah, no, I can get it cheaper, and half the time they go, well, look, I really want to work with you guys, and I trust you. and here you go. And so we do sell apartments, but you've got to know those numbers because otherwise you just make yourself a busy fool. And I think the point with the self-employed agents is that yeah, your costs are not your £150 a month or £300 a month, um, or whatever the license fee is to your particular brokerage. That's one of your costs. You've still got your own fuel costs. You've still got your own marketing costs, your heat and light, and all of these, your accountant, and all these different things. And also, you should have an hourly rate that you're willing to work for, because I've never had a job where I walk in and they dictate, like they say, I'll pay you this, and if I'm not happy with it, I accept it. Do you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
I say, this is what I want to be paid, and the employer is either either feels I'm worth that money or not. And I don't think any member of the public, and sometimes you can explain it to this, like they're saying, "Oh, I want you to do it for this much." You can say to them, "Well, when you go to work each day, does your boss come in and say, oh, I just want to pay you a bit less today?"
Yeah,
Um,
that's the point. Is I think you make there. It's not. You've never taken an employed job and your wage has fluctuated and changed.
that's
You
right.
take a job, it's that amount, and you can we get paid per annum, but really you can always work out as an hourly rate. But it's not on a Tuesday. Oh, actually, I'm going to drop you down to this. But oh, actually, Friday, I'm happy to pay you more. That's your worth, and that's what you're getting paid. And as you say, if you're going to be self-employed and taking all the risks and you want the rewards back, you need to work out how much you want to be earning.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think it's a really important exercise for people to do. Um, but I do want to say, like, yeah, don't get so granular with it because I think, again, as agents sometimes, or maybe just as business people, we get really, really picky with stuff, and then the exercise just doesn't get finished or it doesn't happen because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I can't quite split those costs between this because of this and that and the other. Well, then just make an estimation, just
Hmm.
get yourself some figures because it'll be 90% accurate.
Be there or thereabouts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
But
that's gonna help.
yeah, but don't forget the little things. So again, I would think most agents will kind of go, "Oh yeah, well I employed, Sandra. She cost me this. Ryman cost me that." But they forget things like you say. They've had to buy a laptop or how much then that laptop costs money to run. Again, if someone's on 35 grand a year, you're not paying them 35 grand because you've got your national insurance, your pension, that kind of thing. But I do think people do sometimes miss out. And even with the self-employed, brigade, it's well, oh yeah, I had a few leaflets done, but that wasn't much. Or I paid for, I've
Mm,
boosted a few social media posts. We like if you work under our brokerage, you get a lot some of your digital marketing done for you. But I know a lot of others they don't. It's just kind of you on your own. So even if you're just boosting a few posts, that all does add up.
mm.
And
Well,
it's amazing how much. Well, from your trips to the corner shop cost you a fortune every month. So you know
yeah,
how
yeah.
just a little spend can add up.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to run, monthly management accounts and not just wait till the end of the year and then get told by your accountant what's happened. And it's easy now with Zero, and I mean that's what we use, but there's others out there, QuickBooks and all this sort of stuff. But you've got to have your numbers monthly, not yearly, so you can actually track all this stuff. Because again, when you start tracking it, that's when you can start managing it, and you'll notice things. And I think. I just don't know why, but I feel like as an industry, we almost feel guilty for making a profit.
Mhm.
You look at, say, let's take, for example, a supermarket, and people will say, blimmin' heck, that's expensive, for that tin of beans or whatever. Well, that might not be a great example where I'm going with this because if you drop a tin of beans, it just generally dents and not bursts open. But let's say a pot of yogurt, and people think, right, well, that's bloody expensive. The thing is, what a supermarket is doing is taking into account they've bought it for X amount. They've got to open their store. They've got to put the lights on and heat it and everything else. They've got to put the staff in there. They've got to pay the people to deliver the product to the store, and then they've got to obviously sell it. And if it doesn't get sold, it goes to wastage. And if somebody drops it and it splashes all over the floor, then they're not going to pay for it. So they have again more wastage. So all of that is factored in to their pricing so that they never break even or lose money. They've got profit factored into everything. And I don't think as an industry we have thought of in that way in the past, and we don't price those things into our models.
No, that is a really good point. A really, really good point. Well done, in fact. Because
I might know a bit what I'm talking about.
yeah, because that was something I did want to mention. Because again, so when we were talking about your overheads, your cost of sales, don't be working that. I mean, you said it, but I want to emphasize it. It's on the amount of properties you sell, not
Mm.
the amount of properties you list,
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
right? Because it's only when you sell them that is you bank. Because what I find when I go out and work with agents, we'll go through their very basics. How many how do you get how many vowels do you need, how many listings, how many sales, and people always say, well, I list at 50%, so if I do 10 vowels, I'm going to list five, and they'll know weirdly at the other end that some sales are going to fall out of bed. So they'll proudly tell me they've got a 10% fall through rate, but they always forget that they don't sell every house they list
Mm.
you know. And actually, I mean, nationally, the stat is that only 56% of properties listed are sold, which is terrifying. I think actually good agents are still only selling about 70%, unless you are literally only handling one or two transactions. If you're handling anything, maybe 10 properties and above, I think if you're selling 80%, you're in the top percentile of agents here. So that's really important to remember is when you're doing your numbers, remember if you're listing 10, you're probably not completing. You're not
Mm.
completing because you're probably only putting eight under offer, and out of those eight under offer, you're maybe only completing on six.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, 10 listings become six completions, and that's a huge difference in pound notes.
Yeah, it's a massive difference, especially if well, you will have done, you've been paying overheads on the ones that you've taken on and not sold.
Yeah.
So that's really important to consider. And then also, you've got to do the exercise on your total overheads. But another thing that's really important to consider is your cost of sales, because you might think you've got, let's say, a £4,000 fee, for instance, and then you work out, but every one of those I pay a professional photographer. Every one of those I pay an outsourced sales progressor when it completes. Um, and anything else you're paying in terms of marketing costs specifically for that property. So, sorry, the other one, like, again, people forget is, yeah, you got your wage bill, but that you got to factor in commission. So, to your team. So every time one of these property completes, you probably, let's just say round number 10% goes off to the whole team in terms of the lister and the negotiator. So you're losing 10% of your fee every time, plus your photographers, plus um, your sales progressors. So actually, your fee is a lot less than you think it was to start with
Mhm.
before you then take into account all your office overheads. Um, so again, that's all got to be factored in. Obviously, really people should be then getting the vendor to pay a commitment fee, etc., for to cover the costs of the marketing. But again, another conversation for another time. But that's the reason you got to introduce things like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. But it's a conversation maybe for another time, but it's important just to mention that minimum fees, minimum viable fees are very important, but also upfront contributions, and upfront payments, are very important, I think, to help with cash flow. And also, as you say, to cover some of those costs that you're going to lose out on down the line, because we're not all going to sell every house we list. That's just the fact of life.
Mm. Yeah, and there will be people watching this probably going, well, I'll just sell some more houses, and then the cost comes down. I'm selling five a month. I'm going to sell 10 a month. Okay, well, go and show me how. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And because
Without
it's not,
spending any more money.
yeah, because yeah, exactly, because it's not as easy as that, as we all know. Um, and yes, but there is, people could change their model and go low fee, high volume, and that will bring the cost of selling each house down. But then your revenue is not going to cut. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to look at how you cut it up.
Mhm.
And I would always suggest that higher fees, higher profit margin is better than low volume. Sorry, high volume, low fee, because there's not a lot of margin in. And actually, we've had conversations with agents like that before who are absolutely smashing it, market leaders. smashing the hell out of it. Brand is everywhere. They are the go-to agents in their area. And then they'll say, yeah, look, it looks good, but we're actually not making that much money. We're not making much profit
Yeah.
because we've had to review our fees now. Um, so yeah, I don't think the high volume, low fee is what people might think it is.
No, fair enough. And of course, if anybody, if you listen to this as an agent and, and thinking, fucking hell, that sounds like a minefield, those costs. I don't know where to start. We obviously, I'm going to say we, but realistically, it will be you. We can help people with this. So if anyone
Yeah,
gives us a shout, have a chat with Neil. We can come into your business and show you what you can do to change things and make it more, either bring more income in or make what you've currently got more profitable.
yeah, definitely.
Great stuff. All right. So listen, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to show you how it's actually done. So I've been Matt Baldock. You've been
The expert, Neil Bulldog.
Wanker. And that was talking Baldocks.
Goodbye.